But I was trying, and certainly if you try to break out of it or resist it, that only adds to the stress. So the biggest change I've noticed is that the mental health is so much more stable, much more, and I feel as I'm generally more in control of the mental health rather than being controlled by those issues.
Your diagnosis, what difference did the diagnosis, having a diagnosis, make to you?
Well, ultimately, the ultimate feeling was relief because I got for the first time in my life a reason for why I was the way I was, and it also helped me to make a review of my life, looking at why my life had been as it had been, why the school life had been as it had been, and why I felt as though I'd missed out on certain things most people go through in their mid to late teens, particularly the social, emotional and maturation part of it, that I felt I was left behind at the point of diagnosis, but it also gave me an opportunity to understand things like strengths and weaknesses, and that helps with making more informed choices about your life, particularly over things like education and careers, and also looking at effective ways of measuring your well-being or measuring success. Individuals, something I remember Tony Atwood talking about, which was very inspiring, was how different individuals with Asperger's syndrome have very individual and often very effective ways of measuring success, which isn't necessarily conventional ways of measuring success, not like what sort of car you drive, what your bank balance is, but it could be something like the way of measuring your success in relation to an interest or obsession.
Let me just say, I'm a little bit nervous. This is really close to my heart, and I've been practicing mindfulness techniques for about a year myself, but because this is quite a mega day, I'm quite nervous to say, the right thing. But so I've also do a session on a Wednesday within the society, where again I'm trying to keep it simple, and it's more like the scientific aspect of it in a sense. For example, I was wondering, do you ever do any chanting?
Not in the secular practice or in the practice that's covered on the 8-week course. There isn't any of that. I have in personal practice, which is more towards the spiritual side of it. I do sometimes do some chanting, and certainly when I go on meditation retreats where the practice is around the spiritual side of it, there's chanting involved there, just very simple chanting, although a chant that there is a very simple chant that can be incorporated into secular practice, which is just mindfulness of breathing.
Well, that's it, because I know if people hear me chant very often, they can sort of chuckle and laugh and think, well, this is a bit weird. And for me, the simplicity of it is just the pure regulation of breath. Yes. Because with anxiety comes a lot of holding of breath while you're thinking, and if you're doing like the chanting, you get in your body before you start, you're regulating the breath, you get yourself into a pattern, and you're able to oxygenate your body. And it's a lot more maybe simple to grasp from a sort of functional way.
So chant that I've used in the spiritual side of the practice is the Anapanasati chant, which in Pali means Anapanasati, just means mindfulness of breathing. And that's a very simple chant. You can do as little or as long or as long as you like. But generally, though, when I'm doing the secular practice, and I do very little, if any, chanting, but certainly in spiritual practice, there is a bit of it, yes. And I have to say, I do quite enjoy it, particularly the sound of it, including doing it in a group. It's quite a soothing sound. So sometimes that helps with calmness as well.
Well, that's it, yeah. Because it's it is quite a functional thing, although it might not appear to be. So also, notice the Tibetan singing bowl as well, which I've been using on a daily basis myself, kind of within the session.
Yes, we're going to do a little optional practice again, which will involve the Tibetan singing bowl a little bit later in the second part of the practice. Yeah.
Every time you run meditation sessions, they're really quite good. It's a great way to release stress, and it's good to think about practical things like reading techniques and chanting, things that you can understand and they have no real effect on how you feel.
That's amazing.
Yes.
How many different techniques are there in the 8-week course?
What I was shown, do you mean actual practices or different different postures?
You gave one example once before, but like we start like quite light and then become like you do like more intense ones, and
eventually if you become more involved in it, you might do, but it often helps just to, well, for me personally, it helps to stay within what you're physically capable of. But of activities that are included in the 8-week course, and I do have the CD recordings of those practices. There's a 3-minute breathing space, which we went through. There's simple mindful yoga exercise, body scan, stretch and breath exercise, and there's sitting practice, and there's a number of smaller former practices as well. In total, not all techniques might generally covered. It's neither comprehensive or exhaustive, but there's usually about 6 or sometimes maybe 7. There was about 7 in the 8-week course that I did, 7 different variations, all with similarities in here and there with them. About 6 or 7 usually, I would think, of those 8-week courses.
was there many on the course when you went?
Then on the course I was on, there was about 8 of us, including myself, and people do it for different reasons. So the reason why I undertook it personally was to try and apply. I've been practicing sitting meditation for quite a few years. The reason why I looked into that course was to apply mindfulness more so to normal life situations, including right here and now. Other reasons why. So a couple of people who I did the course with were actually expectant mothers, and the reason why they sought the practice was to be able to be with and go with the labour and giving birth process, which they both later found very, very helpful. It helped them through all of that, and there was somebody who'd also done it because he'd been through a very stressful period in his life, and he needed it to work more with that. Incidentally, where the secular practice came from is where it was first applied into a health setting. It was John Kabat-Zinn who developed the 8-week course. That's the guy whose quotation you saw earlier. His background is as a hospital physician, worked with terminally ill patients and noticed when working with them that they were experiencing a lot of anxiety, and also their relatives, friends and family were experiencing as much as, and in some cases even more, anxiety than they were. So he introduced those practices into the hospital he was working in, and over time found it had a very positive effect on his patients and also his visitors.
Okay. Any other questions before students prescribe?
I can see obviously like in the travel and stuff with different environments and things like that, and I just wondered what was your favourite place that you've been to and why you appreciate that environment so much?
It's very difficult to say what my favourite place of all is, because I'd like to say that I've found unique experiences in each place that I've visited, and things that I like in places that I visit, and something that I've noticed during practice sometimes when memories of that come up is a tendency to put labels on places that you like, or places or situations that you've been through when travelling that you perhaps don't like. But where I feel as though I've got the most enjoyment from is from, and where I've learned most about myself and also how I relate to other people, is from trekking and in some cases the camping holidays out, just out being in nature, away, stepping back from the flow of life. Some of those pictures that you saw in the presentation were taken in Iceland, where it's very easy to do that when there's, in a country that's very nearly as big geographically as England, but with only 300,000 people. There are parts of the UK where you can do that as well, but it's places where you can step back from the flow in that way, not necessarily hide from the flow, but just being present with nature helps you more to be present with yourself in the moment here and now.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to break for 20 minutes and Chris will be back later to take us through to lunchtime on this.